Oh, thank you very much, Mala, for that. Yes, the DP right there handing over to FDC. We shall continue to monitor that space. Well, our next conversation, Sides of a Horn, was released globally in 12 languages on June 25th, 2019. The film received a variety of outstanding reviews from well-respected critics and was covered by top-tier outlets. The movie premieres today in Uganda, a country where the African rhino became extinct in 1993. And today we ask, can a movie save the African rhino? Well, we have Mr. Shaban Senyange, a conservationist who is one of the promoters of the movie, to talk to us about the African rhino. And we also have the writer and director of the movie, that is Mr. Toby Wosko. Very good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ramiro.
So we are talking about the rhino. Let me start with you, Shaban.
Right.
Before we go into that, talk about the rhino and how best we can save it, let me play the trailer from your movie.
Kulubaba. Ngiyabonga ukuba nathi kuze kule manje. Cela ugcina umndeni wami. Wena manje mangu. Amen.
Only white. Okay. I was having this conversation with my people right here. That is the trailer right there. And like I mentioned, I have Mr. Shaban Senyange, a conservationist, and I also have the writer-director of that movie, Mr. Toby Wosko, and they join me right now in the studio. Very good morning. Mr. Shaban, Mr. Toby.
Yeah.
So tell me about the movie. What should we expect tonight?
So the movie it's 17 minutes long. It's a narrative, scripted, dramatic film, not a documentary. And it's about two brothers-in-law who are from the same community, the same circumstances, and of course the same family, who end up on opposite sides of this war, of the poaching war. So it's kind of a dramatic character study of how two people from the same family can end up on opposite sides of the poaching war. And tonight, thanks to Shaban, who's brought me out here to Uganda on a 1 to 2 week long tour, tonight we're going to have a big premiere at Speak Resort. I think there's about 300, 400 confirmed RSVPs. Red carpet. He's not holding any punches.
This is nice and all, Mr. Toby, but do you think this movie will be able to give you the impact that you're looking for?
Yes, and it already has. We've been screening all over the world. One of my missions was to get the film out in Asia, which is where the demand for rhino horn and other wildlife products is highest. I think it's been viewed about 1.5 million times in China, and a lot of times in Thailand and Vietnam. And so it's about showing the people in Asia the effect of what they're consuming, the effect that it's having on the other side of the world in Africa. It's fueling this poaching war. And then around the world, we've created a lot of awareness. And now it's really about focusing on the African continent. And that's what we're doing here in Uganda.
So first off, you focused on Asia because this is where we have the most ruthless poachers right there. So do you think you had the impact you were looking for?
Yes, yes.
In China, Taiwan?
China, Taiwan, Thailand, and Vietnam. We worked with Wild Aid, the African Wildlife Foundation, Virgin Unite, which is Sir Richard Branson, our executive producer's foundation, to get the film out and to reach the people who will have the most impact on to really try to curb the demand and show them the effect of what their actions are having on the other side of the world.
Let me now involve Mrs. Shaban Senyange, conservationist. Right. Now, Mrs. Shaban, let me ask you the most basic questions.
Right.
And why are rhinos being poached?
Well, like Toby said, when you have a huge demand from Asia, where people think, they make the rhino horn into artifacts, or they have their own beliefs around the rhino horn having special medicines, or something special, when it's just really the same material from same as our fingernails. So it's really just about to create that awareness, that it's not anything different from what you already have. And I think that is why this conversation becomes so important.
So there's no medicinal advantages of using rhino horn?
No.
So these people just lie to their buyers just to create more demand. That,
Exactly.
hey, this rhino horn can be used to make some medicine for nosebleeds, convulsions.
Well,
so none of
goes,
that is
it goes
true.
back hundreds of years
Wow.
to tradition, which is
Wow.
why it's so hard
Exactly.
to break
Yeah.
that mentality.
Wow.
Yeah.
Behavioral change in conservation is one of the hardest things to achieve, and this is why conservation awareness through movies like Sides of a Horn, that is how you create impact. And how this came to be really is, having conversations with him over a year ago, bringing the film to Uganda that lost all its rhinos in 1983 and now on its trajectory to recovery with 30 at the Zwa Rhino Sanctuary. There couldn't be a better time to have this conversation than now in Uganda.
Wow, couldn't be a better time. I agree 100% because a kilo of rhino horn is going for $60,000. And your basic rhino weighs 6.3 kilos. So that makes it around 340,000 US dollars on the black market.
For one rhino.
Wow, for one
Yeah.
rhino. Mr. Senyange, where's the what is the biggest supply of rhino horn? Where's the biggest supply of rhino horn coming from?
So there's a lot of it coming from the African continent, and I think this is why Toby is saying you have to tackle the issue from both sides. From the demand side, which they've done in Asia, across Asia, and what they were doing was really to create that awareness and influence behavior change, but also most of it, the rhino horn is being supplied from the African continent. And this is why one of the things the movie addresses is really the issue of involving communities into conservation issues, because you're not going to tell people to start caring about rhinos if they don't have sustainable livelihoods to support their families, to have proper health care, to address issues around poverty, and we're all down to human basic survival. I'm not going to tell you to protect a rhino if your basic need is not even an assurance that you're going to have the next meal. So involving the communities into issues around protecting wildlife, but also deriving benefit from the wildlife, is really a direction that we need to take, and that's going to be an important step into fighting the poaching war at the periphery.
So you're saying poverty has exacerbated poaching in this country because subsistence poachers have to look for a livelihood.
Exactly.
In a way. Okay, let me just engage Mr. Toby. Who is the biggest problem? Is it the subsistence poachers or the professional poachers?
It's the international crime syndicates.
Yes, the professional
who,
ones.
the professionals who are, they've turned this into a multi-billion-dollar industry, wildlife crime, and they're going into the communities in Africa that are on the border of national parks, and they are finding the most desperate people and saying, "I'll give you $3,000 if $3,000 if you hop over that fence and kill a rhino." And then they're taking that rhino horn and selling it on the black market in Asia for up to $300,000. So it's really these crime syndicates who are the bad guys in my eyes.
Okay, Shaban, what species of rhino are being poached the most?
So we have already driven quite a number. We have 5 species, and we've already driven, a couple of them to extinction. And about last year, we lost Sudan, who was the last male of his species. So that is already us witnessing an entire species go to extinction in our very own eyes. We used to talk about rhinoceros when we were growing up, and that same effect that faced the rhinoceros we're seeing with the rhinos, with elephants, with pangolins, and all these are the endangered species.
So which species of rhino is being poached the most? Is it the white rhino or the black rhino?
It wouldn't be really a question of both. All of them are at the risk of extinction. So you can't, place them in Uganda itself. We drove the northern white and the eastern black rhino to extinction due to poaching. The ones that we have, the southern white rhinos, were just donated from the US and Kenya. So even the rhinos we have here are not originally from Uganda. So just on the context of Uganda alone,
It's believed that the black rhino is poached the most because it has both horns. Because it has both horns on the black rhino are roughly the same size on the
True.
Yeah.
the black rhino.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas when it comes to the white rhino, it has a large front horn and second horn a quarter of this size, so making it
Right.
lesser of a target right there.
And the black rhino is also, it's more endangered.
Right.
There's only about 5,000 black rhino left, whereas there's about 20, 25 white rhino.
And so, secondly, black rhinos are more solitary than the white rhinos. This means it is more simple to isolate a black rhino for poaching. Is it true?
Yeah, it is. I mean, they have different behaviors, and I think this is why you have a lot of similar to other animals that are solitary. It's going to be easier to hunt it down, and this is why most of the rhino programs that you have across the African continent. Classic example of what's happening at the Zwa Rhino Sanctuary. You have rangers monitoring these rhinos 24 hours just to make sure the same occurrences do not happen, because the poachers are not going to rest. If, like Toby said, you have someone from the demand side telling you you're going to get $3,000 if you bring this product, and it's the only way you're assured to get the money, and you don't have any other alternative livelihood.
So as we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about solutions. Mr. Toby, in South Africa, it has worked for them in the list. Dehorning of rhinos, is it feasible?
No, it's just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. It's not solving it, because every time you dehorn a rhino, you need a helicopter, you need a whole team, you need the tranquilizers, and it's extremely expensive. And then the rhino horn just grows back. So it's not sustainable. It's just a temporary solution to try to help some of them. But it's definitely not the answer.
Toby, yes, the rhino horn grows back 3 to 4 years, but it's believed if you can trim it every 1 year, yeah, you can succeed.
But it's too expensive to be sustainable. And also, poachers will still kill that rhino, even if it doesn't have a horn, because one, they want to send a message to the rangers and the conservationists. And secondly,
to avoid tracking the same animal again.
And they don't want to track the same animal again, running around looking for an animal that doesn't even have a horn, so they'll kill it anyway.
So what are the feasible ideas that we can come up with to preserve the rhino?
It's, for me, the biggest thing is what Shaban was saying, which is community involvement, making it beneficial for the people living next to the parks, who are kind of the first frontier, to take care of that wildlife instead of poach it. So finding ways to engage them in activities that are protecting the rhino, whether that means becoming a ranger or, we were speaking with the people at the Rhino Sanctuary here in Uganda, and they've done about 15 things to include the community in really creative ways. And so it really starts there for me.
Shaban, would the legalizing of the sale of rhino reduce the demand?
Yeah, totally.
If we are to say, okay, we are going to legalize rhino horn, would it satisfy the demand and reduce poaching?
I don't think it would really, because
Yeah.
like Toby said,
They tried it
you're
in
just
South Africa,
you're just creating a temporary solution, and we all know how the implementation of those laws really goes. I'm not going to give examples, but we know.
Yeah.
Putting up the laws is one thing. Implementing the laws is another, especially when, like I said, when you don't solve the root cause. The root cause is really people trying to make a living. That is basically it. So if we do not address that, it's still going to happen anyway.
Anyway, they did try it with ivory cells,
Right.
one of ivory cells, but it did not work. It just ended up doing the opposite.
Because you're feeding the demand.
Exactly,
You're
yeah.
condoning it. You're saying,
Yes.
Yeah.
keep doing this.
So in South Africa, Kruger Park, they also tried to paint the horn pink.
Seen that.
Painting the horn pink and also poisoning the horn.
Yeah.
Is it feasible?
I mean, it's the same conversation we had in one of our media outreaches yesterday, and they said, well, you wouldn't want to do that because then you're taking away from the beauty of the rhinos. And if you have tourists coming in to pay money that is going to be driven back to conservation, you're taking away from it. It's like if I gave you a hammock and painted your hair, you lose what makes you Romeo, right?
Indeed. But according to them, they're saying that the reason, if you paint it pink, even if it's smashed, the rhino horn is smashed into powder, it would still be seen at
Right.
the customs at the airport. They would still be seeing that pink and know, okay, this is rhino horn. And poisoning, you didn't say anything on poisoning of the horn.
So then again, what Toby said, doing those operations is very, very expensive. And if you have a national park that has maybe about you're not going to do that for 5,000 rhinos, especially when you're looking at the feasibility. So if you're going to do something like that, I think it's going to be really down to how do you engage communities. And Toby said the Rhino Sanctuary is already doing an amazing job with that, involving the communities and having them benefit from the resource. When you give the community people benefits from a resource, it's going to go a long way into having them really go so much into protecting that.
Okay, we are going to end this conversation
Right.
and just link over to my reporter right there, Stephen, in Big Day. Just before we wrap up, where can I go if I want to join this fight against rhino poaching? Toby, just 40 seconds as we wrap up.
Yeah, so you can go to rhinomovie.com
Rhinomovie.com.
right now, and you can watch the movie there. You can, there's a lot of engagements on the website of ways to get involved on many different levels. So rhinomovie.com.
Rhinomovie.com. Thank you very much. That is Toby Wasco. He's the writer and director of that movie. And we also have Shaban Sinyange. He's a conservationist. He's very, very prolific in that.